The Christmas tree lights twinkled mockingly as Victoria's words echoed through the dining room. My father, James Anderson, kept his eyes fixed on his untouched turkey dinner, his knuckles white around his fork. My teenage half-sister, Emma, looked between us nervously, while my stepbrother, Marcus, smirked from behind his wine glass. "Did you hear me, Michael? Get out." Victoria stabbed her finger toward the door, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "I won't have you ruining another family Christmas with your pathetic presence." I calmly took another bite of turkey, savoring the moment. 5 years of careful planning had led to this exact scenario. Victoria had no idea that while she'd been redecorating my childhood home with my father's money, I'd been building an empire. "You're nothing but a reminder of James's mistakes," she continued, her voice dripping with venom. "Living in that tiny apartment, working your meaningless IT job. You're an embarrassment to the Anderson name." I checked my watches, 7:58 p.m. Right on schedule. "Actually, Victoria," I said quietly, taking a sip of water, "I think you'll find." My phone rang, cutting through the tension. The caller ID read Harrison and Associates Real Estate. I put it on speaker. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson," came the crisp voice of Thomas Harrison. "I'm calling to confirm the completion of the Riverside Estate acquisition. All properties have been transferred to your holding company, effective immediately." Victoria's face drained of color. The Riverside Estate wasn't just any property, it was the crown jewel of the city's real estate market. A sprawling complex of luxury properties, including the very mansion we were sitting in. "What is this?" My father finally spoke, looking up from his plate. "Perhaps we should discuss the new lease terms," I said calmly, pulling a folder from my briefcase. "You see, Victoria, while you were busy redecorating my childhood home, I was building something of my own. Anderson Digital Solutions isn't just some meaningless IT job, it's a $2.7 billion tech company." Marcus choked on his wine. Emma's fork clattered to her plate. "You're lying," Victoria whispered, but her voice trembled. I opened the folder and began laying out documents one by one. "First, there's the matter of ownership. This mansion, along with the entire Riverside estate, now belongs to Phoenix Holdings, my company. Then there's the interesting matter of the family trust." "Stop," my father interrupted, his voice hoarse. "Michael, what have you done?" "What have I done?" I smiled, remembering the day 5 years ago that changed everything. "Let me tell you exactly what I've done, Dad." 5 years earlier, I stood in my father's study, watching Victoria parade around in my mother's favorite pearl necklace. "James, darling, we really should clear out all these old things. Michael doesn't need them anymore, and the space could be perfect for Marcus's trophy room." My mother had been gone for just 6 months. The pearl necklace was supposed to be mine, to give to my future wife someday. But Victoria had already claimed it, along with everything else that mattered. "Of course, dear," my father mumbled, not looking up from his newspaper. He'd become a shadow of himself, since marrying Victoria, letting her systematically erase every trace of my mother from our home. I'd just graduated with my master's in computer science and business. But Victoria made sure I wasn't offered a position at Anderson Technologies, the company my grandfather had built. Instead, the VP position went to Marcus, fresh out of his bachelor's in communications. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight Victoria's games. I'd play a longer one. I took a junior IT position at a small startup, rented a modest apartment, and began building Anderson Digital Solutions in secret. My mother had left me a small inheritance, $50,000 that Victoria couldn't touch. I invested every penny in developing revolutionary software for real estate management and analysis. Within 2 years, major property companies were licensing our technology. I lived frugally, driving an old car and wearing discount clothes, while reinvesting every profit. Victoria delighted in pointing out my apparent failure at family events. "Look at poor Michael," she'd say, laughing with her society friends. "Can't even afford a decent suit. Thank goodness Marcus is here to restore the Anderson name." What Victoria didn't know was that I'd already attracted major venture capital investment. Anderson Digital Solutions was revolutionizing property technology, and I was using the profits to quietly buy up real estate through Phoenix Holdings, a separate company Victoria knew nothing about. Meanwhile, Marcus was running Anderson Technologies into the ground. His inexperience and Victoria's extravagant spending were bleeding the company dry. My father seemed blind to it all, retreating further into himself. I watched as Victoria manipulated my father into transferring more and more assets into her name. She convinced him to put the mansion up as collateral for a loan to save Anderson Technologies from Marcus's mismanagement. That's when I made my move. Through a series of shell companies, I bought up Anderson Technologies' debt. Then I waited for Victoria to make her final mistake. She did 3 months ago, when she forged my father's signature on loan documents. I had everything documented by private investigators. The evidence was damning. Present-day Nita. Present-day Nita. The loan documents, Victoria, I said, sliding them across the table. The ones where you forged Dad's signature. Did you really think nobody would notice? Victoria's hands shook as she looked at the papers. These are lies. The forensic handwriting analysis says otherwise, I replied. Along with the security footage of you in Dad's study at 2 a.m., practicing his signature. My father picked up the documents, his face ashen. Victoria, is this true? James, he's trying to turn you against me. Victoria grabbed his arm. After everything I've done for this family, everything you've done, I laughed softly. Let's talk about what you've done. You've spent the past 5 years systematically looting this family's wealth. You convinced Dad to put Marcus in charge of Anderson Technologies, knowing he wasn't qualified. You've been selling off company assets and funneling the money into your personal accounts. I pulled out more documents, bank statements, transfer records, emails between Victoria and her private banker in the Cayman Islands. But your biggest mistake, I continued, was putting up this house as collateral. Because now, Victoria, you don't own any of it. Phoenix Holdings does. And Phoenix Holdings belongs to me. Emma was crying quietly. Marcus had slumped in his chair, his arrogance finally deflated. Dad, I said gently, I know you've been lost since Mom died. Victoria took advantage of that. But it's time to wake up. My father's hands were trembling as he read through the documents. The company, the house, Anderson Technologies can be saved, I said. I've kept every piece of evidence of Victoria and Marcus's mismanagement. We can have them removed from the board immediately. I've already spoken to the other shareholders. You can't do this. Victoria shrieked, standing up so suddenly her chair crashed backward. This is my house. Not anymore, I replied calmly. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave. The police are very interested in speaking with you about those forged documents. Victoria turned to my father, desperate. Are you going to let him do this to me? To Marcus? But my father had finally found his voice. Get out, he whispered. Then louder, get out of my house, Victoria. Victoria's face contorted with rage. She grabbed her wine glass and threw it at me, but I was ready. I moved aside, letting the red wine splash against the wall behind me. Security, I called out, and 2 men in suits appeared in the doorway. Please escort Mrs. Anderson and Marcus out. Make sure they don't take anything that isn't personally theirs. As Victoria was led away, screaming threats and obscenities, Emma spoke up through her tears. Michael, what's going to happen to me? I sat down next to my half-sister. Despite Victoria's influence, Emma had always been kind to me, leaving small gifts at my apartment and sending secret text messages of support. Your family, Emma, I said softly. You'll always have a home here. In fact, I've set up a trust fund for your education, something Victoria's been blocking for years. Emma threw her arms around me, sobbing with relief. My father sat in silence for a long moment, then looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Your mother, she'd be so proud of you, son. And I'm so sorry, I've been a fool. We have a lot to talk about, Dad, I said, pulling out one final document. But first, I believe this belongs to the family. It was the deed to my mother's pearl necklace, which I'd tracked down and bought back from the auction house where Victoria had sold it. Welcome home, Michael, my father whispered, and for the first time in 5 years, I saw him smile. As the security team supervised Victoria and Marcus packing their belongings, I sat in my father's study, soon to be my office, and began making calls. By morning, the news would break. Anderson Digital Solutions was merging with the reformed Anderson Technologies, creating one of the largest tech real estate conglomerates in the country. Victoria's carefully crafted world had crumbled in a single evening, while the empire I'd built in secret was finally revealed. As I watched the snow falling outside, I smiled, knowing that this Christmas had given our family something priceless. a fresh start. The morning after Christmas brought chaos and revelation. News vans lined the street outside the Riverside estate, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like metal flowers seeking the sun. Inside, I sat in my father's study, now mine, watching Victoria's meltdown go viral on social media. Breaking tech billionaire Michael Anderson exposes family fraud scheme scrolled across my tablet screen. Victoria's mascara-streaked face filled every news website. Her walk of shame from the mansion captured by security cameras had already become a meme. "Sir," my assistant David knocked on the door. "The board members are ready for the emergency meeting." I straightened my tie, a custom piece that cost more than Victoria's monthly spa budget. "Has Marcus arrived?" "Yes, sir. He's quite disheveled. Currently in the conference room with his lawyer." I smiled. Of course Marcus brought a lawyer. He still didn't understand that no amount of legal maneuvering could save him now. The conference room fell silent as I entered. 10 board members sat around the massive mahogany table, with Marcus and his attorney at the far end. My stepbrother had traded his usual smug expression for something between terror and rage. "Good morning," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "I trust everyone has reviewed the documents I sent over." Marcus's lawyer, a nervous man named Peterson, cleared his throat. "Mr. Anderson, my client maintains his innocence in any financial irregularities at Anderson Technologies. These accusations are baseless and potentially defamatory." I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's display system. "Let's review the evidence, shall we?" For the next hour, I methodically laid out 5 years of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. Email trails showed Marcus and Victoria systematically looting company resources.
Yes.
Wies Alford, I thought of an Situation dat Mevelting company resources. Security footage revealed late-night document shredding sessions. Bank statements traced millions in misappropriated funds. "And here," I said, pulling up a particularly damning email chain, "is Marcus instructing the CFO to create false financial reports for the board. Note the date, just 3 months." Marcus slumped in his chair as his lawyer frantically scribbled notes. "The company lost $50 million under Marcus's leadership," I continued. "Fortunately, Anderson Digital Solutions has the resources to not only cover these losses, but to propel the merged companies into a new era of growth." "This is bullshit," Marcus suddenly exploded, standing up. "You set us up. You've been planning this for years." I remained seated, calm. "Planning what exactly?" "To stop you from destroying our grandfather's legacy. To prevent Victoria from stealing our family's wealth." "Yes, I planned carefully. The difference is, my plans were legal." "The board needs to vote," Peterson interjected. "My client has certain rights as a major shareholder." "Had rights," I corrected, displaying another document. "Marcus signed over his shares to Victoria last month, who then used them as collateral for a personal loan. A loan that coincidentally is now owned by my holding company." The board members murmured amongst themselves. Marcus's face went from red to white. "All in favor of removing Marcus Anderson from all positions within Anderson Technologies and initiating legal proceedings to recover misappropriated funds?" I asked. The vote was unanimous. "You can't do this," Marcus shouted as security entered the room. "I'm an Anderson." "No," I said quietly. "You're just another criminal who got caught. Take him out." As Marcus was escorted from the building, my father entered. He looked better than he had in years, despite the dark circles under his eyes from our late night of discussion. "The police want to speak with us about Victoria," he said, taking a seat. "They've frozen her accounts, but some money is still missing." I nodded. "About $3 million transferred to offshore accounts last week." "Don't worry, I've already traced it. Our financial forensics team is working with international authorities to recover everything." The board meeting continued, with presentations on the merger details. Anderson Digital Solutions would absorb Anderson Technologies, maintaining the family name, but under completely new management. My father would retain an advisory role, but operational control would be mine. After the meeting, Emma was waiting in my office. At 16, she looked so much like our father, but she had none of Victoria's cruelty in her eyes. "The movers found something in Victoria's closet," she said, holding out a small wooden box. I think it belonged to your mom." My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside lay photographs, letters, and small keepsakes Victoria had claimed were lost years ago. At the bottom was my mother's diary. She kept these hidden, Emma whispered. She used to read them and laugh. I closed the box carefully, containing my anger. Thank you for bringing this to me, Michael. Emma twisted her hands nervously. Some kids at school are saying awful things about Marcus and Victoria, about our family. I moved around the desk and hugged my sister. People will talk. Let them. We know the truth, and that's what matters. What if I'm like them? She asked in a small voice. What if I'm like Mom and Marcus? You're not, I assured her. You're an Anderson, a real one. Speaking of which, I pulled out an envelope. Your trust fund paperwork, full college tuition, living expenses, and a monthly allowance that makes sense. No more Victoria controlling your future. Emma's eyes welled with tears as she read the documents. The amount was generous but not excessive, enough to ensure she could focus on her education without worrying about money, but not so much that she'd lose motivation. A knock at the door interrupted us. David entered with a concerned expression. Sir, Victoria's here. She's demanding to speak with you. I checked the security feed on my phone. Victoria stood in the lobby, designer outfit wrinkled, makeup smeared. The night in a budget hotel had clearly taken its toll. Send her up, I said. Emma, you should go. I want to stay, she replied firmly. I need to see this. Victoria burst into the office like a wounded animal, all desperation and fury. You think you've won? You think this is over? It was over the moment you decided to target my family, I replied calmly. The police have your banking records, Victoria. The fraud charges alone will put you away for years. I made this family, she shrieked. I gave you class, connections, everything. You gave us nothing but pain. Emma spoke up, her voice steady. You're not even a good actor, Mom. We all saw through you. Victoria recoiled as if slapped. After everything I've done for you, like stealing my college fund, Emma interrupted, or telling my friends' parents I was troubled and dangerous, so I wouldn't get invited to parties. Or maybe you mean demolishing my self-esteem, so I'd be as desperate for approval as Marcus. I watched proudly as my sister stood her ground. Victoria's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little. Enough, I cut in. You have two choices, Victoria. One, you sign these papers, agreeing to leave quietly with a small settlement that will keep you comfortable but not wealthy. You'll have no contact with this family ever again. 2. You face multiple federal charges, and I personally ensure every society friend you've ever had knows exactly what you did. You can't erase me, she hissed. I'm still legally married to your father. Check your email, I replied. Dad's lawyer filed for divorce this morning. We have enough evidence of your crimes to ensure you get nothing. Victoria's shoulders sagged as reality finally set in. I slid the settlement papers across the desk. Sign, and you can walk away with some dignity intact. Fight, and I'll destroy every bridge you've ever built. Her hand shook as she picked up the pen. Within minutes, it was done. Goodbye, Mother, Emma said softly as Victoria walked out of our lives forever. Later that evening, as snow began falling again, I sat with Dad and Emma in the kitchen. The chef, who had quit when Victoria left, but returned upon learning of the changes, served us simple comfort food, grilled cheese and tomato soup. To new beginnings, Dad raised his glass of wine. To family, Emma added with a smile. To Mom, I said quietly, touching the pearl necklace in my pocket. The real heart of this home. As we ate and talked about the future, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Victoria's reign of terror was over. Marcus's incompetence could no longer threaten our grandfather's legacy. And most importantly, our family was healing. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Harrison. Final paperwork filed. The entire Riverside estate is officially yours. I smiled, remembering Victoria's face when she realized who really owned the mansion. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning, it's about restoring what was stolen, healing what was broken, and building something stronger from the ruins. The next morning, as Victoria and Marcus were escorted off the property, I stood at the window of my childhood home. Now truly mine, and watched them leave. Their designer luggage looked oddly out of place in the rideshare car they'd been forced to call. Emma appeared beside me, clutching a cup of hot chocolate. "Best Christmas ever," she said with a small smile. I put my arm around her shoulders and nodded. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with perfect timing and irrefutable evidence. "Merry Christmas, Emma," I said, watching Victoria's car disappear down the long driveway. "Let's go help Dad with breakfast." 1 month after Victoria's dramatic exit, the dust had finally begun to settle. The merged Anderson Technologies and Digital Solutions was thriving. Our stock price had doubled and the media frenzy was dying down. But karma wasn't finished with Victoria and Marcus yet. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when David rushed in without knocking, something he never did. "Sir, you need to see this," he said, tablet in hand. "Marcus just went live on social media." The video showed my stepbrother, unshaven and wild-eyed, standing in what appeared to be a cheap motel room. "Michael Anderson is a fraud," he slurred, clearly drunk. "He stole everything from us. But I have proof that will destroy him." I leaned back in my chair, amused. "Let me guess, he's trying to shop around some fabricated evidence." "Better," David smirked. "He's accidentally live streaming his attempted crime. The FBI is watching in real time." On screen, Marcus was waving a USB drive. "All the real financial records are right here. Once I release these, everyone will see what a fraud my stepbrother is." What Marcus didn't know was that his smoking gun was actually a carefully crafted trap. 3 weeks ago, our security team had detected his attempts to hack into the company's servers. Instead of blocking him, I authorized a controlled leak of doctored documents. Documents that, if released, would prove his own guilt beyond any doubt. "Should we shut down his stream?" David asked. "No," I replied, watching Marcus's meltdown with clinical interest. "Let him dig his own grave." Within hours, Marcus was in FBI custody, charged with attempted corporate espionage on top of his existing fraud charges. His dramatic exposure attempt had backfired spectacularly, providing prosecutors with a recorded confession of his crimes. But the real drama was yet to come. That evening, as I was having dinner with Emma and Dad in the mansion's renovated kitchen, our security chief appeared. "Sir, Victoria was just arrested at JFK Airport." Dad nearly choked on his pasta. "She was attempting to flee the country with false documents," the security chief explained. "And she had some interesting luggage." It turned out Victoria had been planning one final act of revenge. Hidden in her designer suitcases were original company documents, family heirlooms she'd stolen years ago, and, most damning of all, detailed records of her own crimes, meticulously kept as insurance against Marcus and others. "She always did love keeping trophies," Dad said quietly, looking at the police report. "Even of her own misdeeds." Emma, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "There's something else you should know. I found Victoria's private diary last week while clearing out my old room." She produced a leather-bound notebook. It's bad, Michael. She was planning this takeover from the beginning, even before Mom died." I spent that night reading Victoria's diary, my blood running colder with each page. She had orchestrated everything, from befriending my father at his most vulnerable, to systematically isolating him from family and friends. She'd even planned to send Emma to a boarding school in Switzerland, removing the last obstacle to her complete control. The next morning, I called an emergency press conference. The media gathered in the mansion's grand hall, the same room where Victoria had once hosted her lavish parties. Camera flashes illuminated the space as I approached the podium, Emma and Dad flanking me in a show of family unity. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "recent events have revealed the full scope of crimes committed against Anderson Technologies and our family. Today we're announcing full cooperation with federal investigators and the creation of a corporate governance division to prevent such abuses from ever happening again." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Anderson, sources say Victoria Anderson was found with incriminating documents. Will charges be filed?" "The evidence speaks for itself," I replied diplomatically. "But this press conference isn't about Victoria or Marcus. It's about the future of Anderson Technologies and our commitment to ethical business practices." The announcement of our new corporate governance initiative, dominated business news, overshadowing Victoria's arrest. Our stock price surged again as investors welcomed the transparency measures. Later that week, I received an unexpected visitor. Victoria's sister, Janet. "I should have warned you years ago," she said, sitting in my office with tears in her eyes. Victoria did the same thing to her first husband's family. "By the time I realized what was happening here, she had already isolated your father completely. Why come forward now?" I asked, studying her carefully. "Because she's got another target lined up," Janet replied, handing me a letter. "She's been corresponding with a wealthy widower from prison, already playing the victim card. Some people never change." I made some calls. Within days, Victoria's prison privileges were restricted, her correspondence monitored. The wealthy widower received an anonymous but detailed dossier about her history. Another potential victim saved. Emma threw herself into launching a foundation for victims of financial abuse, turning her pain into purpose. Dad slowly emerged from his shell, starting to date again, properly this time, with both Emma and me vetting any potential partners. The mansion underwent a transformation too. Victoria's cold showroom-style decorating was replaced with warm, family-oriented spaces. Mom's photographs returned to the walls, and her garden, which Victoria had paved over for additional parking, was restored. One evening, as spring began to bloom, I found Emma sitting in Mom's restored garden. "Do you think she knew?" Emma asked, touching a newly planted rose bush. "Your mom, do you think she knew what kind of person Victoria would become?" I sat beside her on the garden bench. Mom was an excellent judge of character. I found some notes she left for Dad, warning him about Victoria. He wasn't ready to hear it then. "I keep thinking about Marcus," Emma admitted. "How Victoria molded him into her perfect puppet. Could I have ended up like that?" "The difference is you saw through her," I replied. "You kept your heart, your integrity. That's worth more than any inheritance." A notification pinged on my phone. Victoria's sentencing was scheduled for next month. Marcus had already pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, turning state's evidence against his mother. "We should be there," Emma said firmly. "Not for her, but for us. To see it end properly." I nodded, proud of my sister's strength. Together then. The garden lights came on automatically, as dusk fell, illuminating the placard we'd installed. "Elizabeth Anderson Memorial Garden, where love grows." Mom would have liked that. Dad joined us, carrying coffee. He looked younger somehow, the weight of Victoria's manipulation finally lifted from his shoulders. "The board approved the new family trust structure," he announced. "Everything's locked down tight. No future Victoria can ever worm their way into controlling the company again." We sat together in the growing darkness, three Andersons rebuilt stronger by the fire we'd endured. Victoria had tried to destroy our family, but she'd only succeeded in forging us into something unbreakable. The garden's motion sensors caught movement. A family of deer venturing out from the woods behind the mansion. We watched in peaceful silence as they grazed among Mom's beloved flowers. "She would have loved this," Dad whispered. Yes, I thought, she would have. And somewhere, I hoped she was watching, proud of the family that had not just survived, but triumphed. The courtroom fell silent as Victoria entered in her orange jumpsuit, a far cry from her designer outfits, and perfectly coiffed hair. Marcus had already been sentenced to 5 years for his role in the fraud scheme. Now it was Victoria's turn to face justice. Emma sat beside me in the front row, her spine straight and eyes steady. Dad sat on my other side, his hand occasionally touching the pocket where he kept Mom's photograph. The same photo Victoria had once tried to throw away, claiming it disturbed the feng shui of the house. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Judge Harrison, no relation to my realtor, took her place at the bench. Victoria's public defender looked nervous. Their strategy of playing the misunderstood socialite had crumbled when Victoria's diary was entered into evidence. Her own words painted a damning picture of calculated manipulation and fraud. "Before we proceed with sentencing," Judge Harrison began, "would the defendant like to make a statement?" Victoria stood, and for a moment I saw a flicker of her old manipulative charm as she turned to face the courtroom. "Your Honor, I admit, I made mistakes," she began, voice trembling perfectly, "but everything I did was for the family. To maintain our social standing, our legacy. That's enough, Judge Harrison interrupted. Mrs. Anderson, your diary details explicit plans to defraud not just Anderson Technologies, but 3 previous families. This wasn't about legacy. This was a calculated pattern of predatory behavior. The sentence came down hard: 15 years in federal prison, full restitution of stolen funds, and a lifetime ban from serving on any corporate board. As Victoria was led away, she locked eyes with me one last time. The mask slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. But it didn't matter anymore. She had no power here. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Emma stepped forward, surprising us all. Today isn't about revenge, she said clearly into the microphones. It's about justice and healing. Our foundation for victims of financial abuse stands ready to help others who've experienced similar manipulation. That's the Anderson legacy, turning pain into purpose. Later that evening, we gathered in Mom's garden for a private celebration. The catering staff, all properly vetted and treated well, unlike Victoria's time, served champagne and Mom's favorite dessert, apple pie. A toast. Dad raised his glass. To Elizabeth, who taught us what real family means. To Emma, whose strength amazes me every day. And to Michael, who saved not just our company, but our family. I shook my head. We saved ourselves. Together. As the sun set, I handed out envelopes to Dad and Emma. What's this? Emma asked, opening hers. Tickets to Mom's hometown in Oregon, I explained. I thought we could visit her family there, reconnect with the relatives Victoria kept us from seeing, maybe learn more about where we came from. Dad's eyes welled up. Elizabeth always wanted to take the kids there. Then let's do it, Emma said firmly. Let's make new memories, better ones. The garden lights illuminated the freshly bloomed roses, Mom's favorites. A year had passed since that fateful Christmas dinner, when Victoria's reign ended. The company was stronger than ever, our family bonds renewed. Marcus wrote occasionally from prison, showing signs of breaking free from Victoria's influence. We responded with measured kindness, firm boundaries, but leaving the door open for genuine change. The mansion, once Victoria's showpiece, had become a true home again. Emma's friends filled the halls with laughter. Dad hosted casual barbecues instead of formal galas. The gates, which Victoria had always kept locked, stood open to family and friends. You know what Mom used to say? I asked, as we enjoyed our pie. Home isn't about the walls or the furniture. It's about the love that lives inside. Emma smiled. Victoria never understood that. She thought everything was about appearance, control. But we knew better, Dad added softly. We just forgot for a while. As night fell over the riverside estate, we could see lights coming on in other houses. Homes of families who'd been helped by Emma's foundation, executives who'd been promoted on merit, rather than manipulation, people whose lives were better because we'd stopped Victoria's poison from spreading. The Anderson name meant something different now. Not just wealth or power, but integrity, healing and redemption. Ready for a new chapter? I asked my family. Their answers didn't need words. In the garden Mom had loved, under stars she taught me to name, we were finally truly home. The end.